Okay, welcome back. So, now this matter which we spoke about in the opening, where some ladies already highlighted it, the matter came through yesterday. We'll have a lawyer to shed light on that matter and some other matters. Mr. Matthias Meribe joins us now. He's a lawyer. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well,
good morning.
Yeah, I know. Apologies on the streets of Lagos. It's a very interesting day, I tell you, in Lagos, and all that is going on. We hope everybody stays safe as much as they can. Now, about that decision of the court, which INEC, by the way, has said they're going to appeal that matter. Now, when you went through that, because this matter came up at different quarters, people talking about whether or not it was really important or necessary, or what the law provided and what we should be doing much later about the permanent voter card, its function in context of the beavers, but particularly about that judgment. And when you read it, what were your impressions? Because those two gentlemen did go to court and they're happy that they got victory. They got judgment from the court.
Yes. After going through the judgment of the court, it was clear that what the court did was to restore the rights of Nigerians, provided you have attained the age of 18, to vote or be voted for. Because it will be absurd that after having gone through the rigors of registration, then the body in question that is vested with the power and the duties to get you registered and issued with the necessary PVC will come out subsequently, after all effort made at even getting even the PVC, and they are telling you that the temporary voter's card issued to you cannot suffice. Meanwhile, the practical effect of what we have seen on the field is that for you to vote, it is the beavers itself that will identify you as the authentic owner of that name and the person who actually was registered in that polling unit. So it is absurd that INEC will be insisting that if you don't have the permanent voter's card, you cannot vote. I mean, that is depriving you of your right, or depriving you having the what you may call the opportunity for you to be part of those who will decide the future of your country, Nigeria, and perhaps your state or whatever. So for me, that decision, for all intents and purposes, captured the legal framework of that provision. And the interpretation being ascribed to it by INEC, for me, for all intents and purposes, runs foul of what that provision intended. And that is what I feel that the Federal High Court correctly interpreted. And then, of course, gave, for me, what I feel to be the right judgment in that regard. However, I know that the Federal High Court refused one of the prayers, which is where the litigant equally asks that whatever judgment they are getting thereof should also be made to be nationwide, in particular as it concerns every other Nigerian that are suffering the same fate as them. But for all, the court was simply saying they didn't come by way of representative, they didn't come in a representative capacity. But for me, whether representative or not, it is a judgment that every other Nigerian can lean on, because it is binding on INEC, binding on all parties, binding on all authorities as it stands.
But Mr. Meribe, how are other Nigerians, because that was an interesting part where lots of people, immediately they saw the judgment, they thought, oh, okay, so it means this can apply to us. But when you look through, and the court was specific about their position on their third prayer, how then can you say that every Nigerian can latch onto? Because I thought it was expressly provided that it was just those two gentlemen who approached the court.
Yes, but notwithstanding, because what the court simply said, because I agree with the court, because it wasn't brought in a representative capacity. Because what you do is that what the court has done is to interpret the provisions under which INEC in question lean on to say that they are depriving individuals of voting because they don't have their PVC. So if that provision has been interpreted by a competent court of jurisdiction, the effect is that every other Nigerian can lean on that particular judgment as a basis of saying that this right endures in their favor.
So
you understand the point I'm making? Yeah.
So shed a little more light on that. How can they take advantage of that? Do they have to go to court to get?
No. They can arm themselves with that authority, even if they are going to the polling unit. Now, the danger there is that if they are deprived, it could form the basis of them suing for damages against INEC. Because that provision, that decision of the court, what it did was to interpret the various provisions of the Electoral Act, which by and large has therefore been given what you may call a clearer definition for all to understand. So the fact for me, I feel that it's even a surplusage for the parties that went to court to request or perhaps to urge the court to also make such a pronouncement to be nationwide concerning all of those that are suffering similar fate. I feel it is a surplusage. It's enough that what the court has done is to give what is the rightful, what you may call a declaration and the rightful interpretation to the provisions of the Electoral Act, which INEC has misconstrued by saying that if you don't come with your PVC, permanent voter card, you cannot vote. No, what that judgment has said is that, look, if you have your temporary voter's card, because what they are simply saying is that the content of what you have in the PVC, so to say, is what matters, because those are where they have front load, or should I say, you have all information concerning you loaded. Okay. That is in the biomodel, the beavers. Not the temporary voter's card and the permanent voter's card, they're almost doing the same thing. It's just that, according to the court, you are looking at the form and content, or should I say the substance, so to say. So
when people now, because Section 47 of the Electoral Act, which was cited there, 47(1), which says, a person intending to vote in an election shall present himself with his voter's card to a presiding officer for accreditation at the polling unit in the constituency in which his name is registered. Now, if the person now goes to the polling unit and this provision is clearly there, and INEC says, look, once you have, because all of the other methods, they say, follows from this particular incident. When you present your card, then all the other processes can kick in. Now, they're saying, look, if you don't do this, the other processes cannot kick in. What if they get there and INEC says, well, look, we're in a bind here. We're not able to carry out these other functions because of this.
Sorry, let me tell you, by the interpretation of the court, that is why, if you read through that judgment, the court made emphasis in stating clearly that what that provision has is that bring your voter's card. It's not talking of bring your PVC, that is your permanent voter's card. So your voter's card could be your temporary voter's card or your permanent voter's card. So whichever one you come with, provided it can be used in identifying you with the beavers, because every information concerning whether it is the PVC or the temporary voter's card you are having is contained in the beavers. And that is why it is possible that some will vote, some will be rejected, some will pass the test. Some will be rejected and some will pass the test. So if that provision says voter's card, and the court was emphatic about it, it says that there's no way, even if it has said permanent voter's card in some other subsequent provision, as long as in interpreting, the court, what the court has tried to do is to give substance to the provisions. In other words, not to give justice to voters, because the truth in our law, the concept is ubi ius, ubi remedium. Where there is a wrong, there is always what? A right. Meaning that you cannot go to court and you come back worse than the way you went. And so what the court has done is to not invest in you, to let you understand your right as fully enshrined in our Constitution as well as the Electoral Act. So you cannot have your temporary voter's card, which by implication will mean that you have been captured in the national registration data of INEC. And so, meaning that every other problem, in other words, things that you needed to do, you have done everything possible for you to have the right to decide your future. So to not say that they are now leaning on just barely having the PVC other than the temporary voters card, I mean, the court saw that as an absurdity and, of course, ruled as such.
It will be interesting to see how this is implemented, because we see that this has not gone down well with INEC. If the idea behind, because if you also look at 47.2, it talks about how the presiding officer shall use a smart card reader or any other technological device that may be prescribed by the commission for the accreditation of voters to verify, confirm, or authenticate the particulars of the intended voter in the manner prescribed by the commission. So there is also an emphasis on making sure that the voter who comes, who presents a card, is really the voter that is before the presiding officer. And that's why INEC continues to say that it only wants people to use their permanent voter card. So I don't know whether this was also taken into cognizance in reaching this judgment.
Yes, yes, the court took that into consideration because the emphasis is on identification to be sure that the person coming before you is the person that is registered in that polling unit and is the person that wants to vote. Because the whole essence is to make sure that we don't have people who are impersonating to come there to vote. And that is why for you to vote, there are two basic ways that can be used in identifying you. It's either your fingerprint or your facial look. If none of this, if you don't pass any of these tests, you'll be asked to leave, that you are not the person that is registered there. So every name on the register has the necessary features, which is the biometric. Either it is the fingerprint or the facial expression. And so to now insist on the card, because meaning that every other person card is just simply the what you may call the label that you use in coming to that place. Now, it is possible that if you don't have that label, does that not take away your personality, as it were? I don't think that should be the intention, and that is what the court tried to interpret there. So that provision of 47.2 is even giving credence, because you will discover that it is the biometric, the BVAS itself, that has all information concerning that person. And that is why you cannot vote unless you carry out those two steps. Either your finger identification, or better still, your facial expression. If none of these things are captured, the implication is that you are not the person registered there to vote in that very polling unit.
How do you think that this can be stretched? Because really, there have been these arguments before now, but I think that perhaps to also maintain some control and maintain some sanity, perhaps that's the reason why INEC continue to insist that people had to get their permanent voters card. But looking at how this has been interpreted now, even though it's only two people that have, that the court says will enjoy this particular judgment because it's not representative, what much more do you think, in what further way can it be stretched? Because people are saying, as time goes on, we should be able to vote with our national identity number. We should be able to vote with our driver's license, because before you get a driver's license, you should be you should have gotten the national identity number. So in future, I don't know whether INEC will appeal this, even though they say they're kicking. Do you think that as time goes on, many more Nigerians might say, look, I don't even need to get on a voter register. The fact that I have this what they call that, my driver's license, or I have a national identification number, should be enough for me to vote?
It's possible that in future that we would vote with our either national or whatever that we have. All that matters is the identification that you are the one that is coming before the commission to vote. That's on the election day. Because what INEC tried to do is to stop this issue of people who are not registered, particularly in the polling unit, to come there to vote, or those who would probably have taken somebody else's identity card or whatever to come and vote. Now, you will discover that by the biometric, BVAS, the BVAS machine, that appears to have taken off all of it, has dealt with that issue considerably. Now, what we need to do is that, for me, for all intents and purposes, I believe that what the court has done is to stretch or better still, expand the horizon of identification so that you don't just pigeonhole everybody to say that if you don't have your, the PVC. Like one of the findings that the court made in that judgment was that, look, you gave a time for registration, people registered. You gave time for collection of the PVC. People went there to collect their PVC, only for them to go on and on. They are telling them that the PVC is not there. Meanwhile, at the time of registration, you gave them a temporary voters register, a card, in order for them to be in the data, that is to say, the national data of the voters register of INEC, and which was duly captured. So what matters is that, what the court tried to do is to look at the content. What is the essence of having either the PVC or the temporary voters card? And what the Beavers has done is that even if you don't come with your card, provided upon putting your thumb printing or your facial distancing, you didn't recognize it, or you either recognize or you are not recognized. It's either it captures you or it doesn't capture you. If it captures you, you belong to that polling unit. If it doesn't capture you, you are out, as it were. So it's not a question of saying that if you don't have your PVC, you cannot vote. That is depriving you of your right to exercise your fundamental and constitutional right to vote or be voted for. That is, for me, what the court tries to do, because it looked at it vis-a-vis the constitutional provision of the law, to see whether what INEC has done by way of saying that if you don't come with your PVC, that you cannot vote. No, that shouldn't be the position. That's what the court has done in this case. The court's interpretation was for purposes of the 2023 election, even though the judgment came a bit late because the first round of election had already gone. So what it means that they can use it in this subsequent election. All that matters is that, one, identify where your polling unit is. Where do you have your polling unit? Once you have your polling unit, they can arm themselves with that judgment. They can go to the polling unit and they'll present it for identification purposes. And for the question for what the court, what the polling officer will only do is to take your biometrics, either your fingerprint or your facial expression. If it captures, all well and good, you pass the test to vote. If it doesn't capture you, you go. Because on the election day, there are people that even have their PVC. They couldn't vote. They couldn't vote. Why? Because it didn't capture their fingerprint, nor did it capture the facial expression. So it means that they are not registered in that area or in that polling unit, as it were.
I'd like to explore the point you made, and in order not to cause confusion, just to be clear on it, as to how this can be stretched. Because the plaintiffs in this case, Koforola, Olusegun, and Wilson Allwell, according to the judgment, are the ones that can enjoy, use that term, the judgment that came out of the court. And to speak further to that, the court took into consideration perhaps the peculiarity. I don't know if you can hear me, Mr. Merribe.
Hearing you, go ahead.
Okay. I think the court also took into consideration the peculiarity of their case, saying that, well, they went to try to get their PVCs at the INEC office, the defendants in this case. They went time and again, and eventually they were told that it had closed. By the way, they had always been told that it was not ready, and eventually they told them that it had closed. So they had to present that evidence that they went and tried to fulfill all the requirements to possess their PVCs. And I think that might not be the case for every other person with the TVC, that's a temporary voter card. So do you think it is fair for those who the court did not mention specifically, I'm talking about other Nigerians with their TVCs, those who were not sure actually went through that process of possessing their PVCs to now want to, again, enjoy this judgment, just to be clear?
Now, let me tell you, that's why I said, because the action was not done in a representative capacity does not mean that it will not be binding. I repeat, that it wasn't done in a representative capacity does not mean that those who fall in the same category with those that instituted the action cannot take advantage of the judgment to or annul in their favor. That doesn't mean so. It doesn't mean that, what you are simply saying is that, or what if we go by the the question that has been raised, it means that every single voter that have experienced the same or similar problem which the current litigant had before getting judgment, everybody should go to court. Just imagine how the court will look like. No, that is not so. That is why if you go to section 287 of the Constitution, this judgment is binding on all authorities. And INEC is one of them.
Just to be clear, Mr. Merbe,
binding on all authorities.
Pardon me, because not everyone is a legal practitioner. Let's understand what this, excuse me, what this representative capacity means. Because again, the court was quite clear on the third order, saying that this suit having not brought in a representative capacity, I find myself unable to grant any relief pursuant to Prayer 3 of the plaintiff's application. Now, Prayer 3 specifically says that any order the court may deem fit for all other Nigerians who are like the plaintiffs and have not gotten their permanent voters card as the court may deem fit. So it was specific, saying I'm not going to grant that. So help us understand, what does this representative capacity mean?
Now you discover that when you are talking about representative capacity, what it means that at the time the action was filed, they are filing not only for themselves, but on behalf of the general public, that's Nigerians generally. All those that are suffering similar fate with him. That is what you mean to file on a representative capacity. And for you to do that, you must show and evidence that you have the right to do so, or better still, you have the consent of every other person to do so. Now, since that was not done, it will be absurd for the court in question to move forward further, because, mind you, that third prayer was a discretionary prayer. It was a prayer sought for, asking the court to just exercise discretion to either give or not to give. That's why I say, if it may deem in the circumstance to award. So, having not proved that you are coming in a representative capacity, the court is not at liberty to move and say, okay, I agree with you. This thing affects every other person. Not until you know that every other person has that same problem, would you now proceed? Because the court, as a general rule, acts based on facts that it presents before them. And to the extent of that judgment, it is the fact that those two people presented that gave rise to the judgment that the court gave. But that is not to say that those who have similar problems or issues, just like I said, all Nigerians cannot begin to move and say, go to court, that is individually, start asking the court to give them award. No. For all intents and purposes, what this court has done in respect of the provisions of the law is to interpret it and say, this is how this thing should be interpreted. As long as your fact falls within the realm of what these people suffer, you can equally enjoy sin. But the court cannot move about and say, look, this suit was filed, haven't made this order, is also binding on every other Nigerian that has similar thing. No, because the action was that representative capacity, in that capacity.
But, you know, I find it's quite interesting because, the court says one thing, you agree to that, and then you say that Nigerians can take advantage of it when indeed you also agree that it was not brought in representative capacity, and the court was quite clear. My concern is ensuring that we don't put, the INEC officials who will be conducting this election in a tricky situation, because the plaintiffs, again, in this case, they are Koforola, Olusegun, and Wilson Allwell, and the court was quite explicit. So if Nigerians would partake, Nigerians with TVCs will partake in the order, what needs to be done? Do they need to now go in a representative capacity or what? Just to be clear on that before Bukola comes in.
Let me tell you, because you can't capture all Nigerians as far as this issue is concerned. Number one, what I'm simply saying is that the people that are suffering this fate, they are very many. So every other person, what will mean if we now want to go by just mere looking at the judgment on the face of it, are we now going to institute individual action? That would be, it means that the court can't even contain them. That's number one. Number two, when the court had made that pronouncement, because like I said, that third prayer was an alternative prayer, and it was left to the discretion of the court to either give or not to give. That the court refused it does not mean that those who are suffering similar fate and have seen this ruling cannot take advantage of it. like I said, what the court has done is to interpret the provisions of the Electoral Act concerning having voters' card for purposes of what? Voting. That is what the court has done. And so I would think that for INEC, on their part, all they need to do is to issue a statement saying that those that have what they call a temporary voters card, otherwise TVC, can equally go to their polling unit, because each of these people were captured, as it were. If they were captured at the data, national registration data of INEC, and clearly they have a polling unit assigned to them, because the whole essence of the temporary voters card, which you have, is for identification as well. So if you have it, so to speak, you can proceed to the polling unit where you are registered, and you'll be allowed. Okay, what does INEC suffer by refusing these people who actually registered and are in that polling unit?
And that's
tomorrow
exactly...
Tomorrow they'll say that there is apathy in voting. Meanwhile, all of these people have a right to vote. They are supposed to be there to vote.
That's exactly...
So what will INEC suffer in refusing them if they are indeed registered in that polling unit?
Exactly, Mr. Meribe, that's exactly my concern. The implications for INEC officials. I'm trying to see this from the point of view of INEC. You know, the work of a presiding officer is not an easy one. You know, be they one or two at a polling unit. Imagine a sea of voters just waiting to vote, and the number of hours that they have to commit to ensuring that the process is over and done with. You know, the Electoral Act, Section 47, provides, though for a voter's card, it doesn't specify whether it's a PVC or it's a TVC, but it says a voter's card. I wonder if the BVAS machine can authenticate the details of voter, of the PVC of the TVC as it would a PVC. So isn't it a call to disorderliness if you say that other Nigerians can take advantage of this?
No, it's not. It's not, because even the TVC, once you are given what they call a TVC, there's a VIN number. Everybody is identified by a VIN number. And even on the election day, that was done. Even those that were identified with VIN number on the election day, some of them couldn't vote because their fingerprint and the facial expression couldn't match.
Then, Mr. Meribe, some Nigerians can also go to court and ask the court, to allow them to vote with their PIN number, with their VIN number. No, excuse me. What you ask yourself, why do we have this bimodal accreditation system? Is to be sure that the person who is registered there is the person that is coming to vote. So you may have that VIN number, but you are not the one that is registered to vote in that polling unit. So let us get it clear so that we don't mix it up. So the whole essence is to be sure that the person coming before the presiding officer is the person registered to vote in that very location or polling unit. Anything outside it is, it's not acceptable. So the point of interest is that as long as you have, because like I said, in the election proper, the VIN number is also imputed in the bimodal. Then your fingerprint is taken to identify, are you the owner of this VIN number? If it says yes, you proceed. If it says no, they do the second one, which is the facial expression. If it says no, you say, no, this is not the owner, please, my friend, take either your PVC or your temporary vote. Go, you cannot vote here. Simple.
So at the moment, INEC has said that, appears we lost it. INEC has said they're taking immediate steps. They're taking immediate steps to appeal this matter. So, Mr. Meribe, I don't know if you can hear me. They say, so does it mean then, since INEC is saying they're taking immediate steps to appeal this matter, if the information is not out there that they've successfully or that they've gone ahead to appeal, it means that these two persons, and who knows, any other person who suffers the same fate, can go present their temporary voter card and should be allowed to vote. Is that right?
Now, let me tell you, the appeal, like I said, before you proceed on appeal, the ultimate question, like I said, is that what do you stand to suffer? What do you stand to suffer if this is allowed? I mean, it's a simple question that you ask INEC. What would they suffer if this is what allowed? Because if you cannot show what you will suffer on appeal, then don't even waste time going there to using taxpayers' money to go on appeal. You must show that by allowing the TVC, that is the temporary voters card, for those that have it to vote, that you are going to suffer enormous damages, so to say, or irreparable damages, then we will not start talking. But as far as I'm concerned, I've looked at it. What do they stand to suffer? Because all it requires is that for those that have their TVC, just go there. If you are then, after all, those that have PVC, many of them, some of them that have their permanent voters card, they still did not vote because their biometrics did not match. So that's simply what we're talking about. Unless you are not going to use the beavers. As long as the beavers will be used, that is why they call it the game changer.
I guess we'll wait and see how this plays out in the courts, because when you say, INEC, what will you suffer? Don't waste taxpayers' money. Basically, INEC, even though you have the money, your money is not your money. Your money is taxpayers' money. So they need to be cautious how they approach all of this. But we do appreciate your perspectives and time this morning, Mr. Matase Meribe. Thank you for your coming on.
Thank you.
All right.